afternoon, evening, wherever you may be. This is Dr. Sarah Langley, and I'm here to talk with you about your sex life. I always say that, you know what, I'm here to upset you, to set you up right. And I decided to just do this impromptu webinar, as I've been doing all month long. I have talked about how to overcome during and after the pandemic. And it's been May is Mental Health Month, and just really wanted to help you overcome during and after the pandemic, overcoming depression, anxiety, whatever it's been, uncertainty, loneliness, how to work things out when it comes to your finances, when it comes to your faith, when it comes to your physical health. We had quite a few intimate interviews with our frontline healthcare providers, as well as someone who actually had the virus and beat it. We have been on fire all month, and now here we are. I haven't forgotten you couples, because now I'm going back to my crates of when I first actually started. As in my early days of counseling, my focus was on couples work. And it really was about helping you to know how to reset, because that was the name of my private practice, Reset LLC, to reset your marriage. But I noticed that the concern has been, I haven't been hearing from you all, like the couples. You know what's interesting is that I used to see your posts, all you couples out there, when it came down to your significant other, about your anniversary, this is your life partner, how, this is your best friend. And it seems like y'all been quiet during this pandemic. So as a counselor, what I used to teach my mentees on is to focus on what is not being brought up in counseling. So that's a counseling tip right there. So you can talk about anything and everything, but then I'm listening for what is it that you're not talking about. And ergo, that's why I'm talking to you tonight, because of the fact that I have yet to really see the posts like I used to when it came to your relationship, or to find out how you're doing. And usually, it's better to hit you hard. Like, that was the type of training that I used to give to my couples, to my clients, to my mentees, is that if you can take care of things that are the hardest, then the easiest is a piece of cake. So I really want to meet you where you are, you couples out there. And y'all can talk back to me. I really wanted to know. I have two great, amazing speakers on tomorrow in regards to your sex life, in regards to your love making, in regards to your relationship period. And usually we would say that the top issue, which I'm about to really debunk that, the issue that we hear often when it comes to your relationship is that the number one issue why people get divorced is sex. Who would agree? I just said I was about to debunk it. But who would say that the number one issue when it comes to relationship, to divorce, is sex? It is not. I'm sorry I let the cat out the bag. I really wanted to let you know that studies have shown that the number one issue, you could talk back to me and let me know what you think it is not sex. It depends on what study you're looking at, but it's not sex. It's more of, really, which is something I want to talk about next week. It really has to do with, hey, how y'all doing this evening, everyone? Thank you for tuning in. Thank you. I appreciate your time. The number one issue that comes down to the relationship piece, or why there have been issues in your relationship, really has to do with communication. And I'm going to talk more about that next time when I talk about how to overcome during and after the pandemic, the parenting and communication series, which is next week. But this week, I really wanted to come before you for a few minutes. And I say that when anybody says they're going to come before you for a few minutes, just know that you're going to pull out your popcorn. It's going to take a minute. Because I really wanted to check on you couples. Because like I said, I haven't been hearing anything in regards to how your relationship is going. And like I said, my heart always had been, when I first started counseling, my practice was really geared to couples. And while at that time I wasn't married, people didn't ask me, okay, well, are you married? My focus wasn't on the marriage. It was more on the relationship. It was more on the connection. It was more on how you two can continue to maintain your oneness that brought you together, and how to help you to sustain it. So this is what I want to ask you all. And then I'm just going to go over a couple of things to prepare you for the 2 amazing speakers that I have lined up tomorrow that's going to talk about your sex life, your relationship, your love making, your love life, and how to help you to survive and thrive during and after the pandemic. So this one is for you. Thank you so much for responding, Myron. Sex and money. So yes, you would think that that is the number one. The number one is actually communication, lack thereof. So those 2 aspects do play part with the communication. People don't communicate about their money, the finances. You have one person who's over the money and one person who's not, and that person who's not over it, feels some type of way because they feel like they're not included when it comes to the finances. There wasn't a communication surrounding how finances are made. Sometimes it's just decided because someone was better at money than the other person. So it just usually happens that way until now there's a concern because communication to keep up with how the finances are divvied out becomes a problem. When it comes to sex, because of the fact that people are not able to talk about what they really want or like, it seemed like it was hot and smoking before, they said I do. And then after you say I do, now all of a sudden you got the person. There's no need to continue to keep the spice going. And people just use, like what happened with the pandemic, what has happened has really opened our eyes to the fact that, do we really know this person that we've been with all these years? I would challenge that perhaps you may not have known as much as you thought you did because of the fact that you had all these other factors that distracted. And you had it perfectly in place to help maintain the marriage to keep it going. But now that we've been in this pandemic, you don't have the distractions like you used to. Now it's like you're just sitting there. Usually this happens when empty nest syndrome kicks in, when the kids leave and they're going home, or not go home, but like they move out of the house and now they're moving on with their lives. And then now you have vowed some years before that you're going to stick it out for the sake of the kids. Now the kids are gone. Now you're sitting there looking square at on the other side of the table with that person. You're like, who are you? So usually that happens with the empty nest syndrome. But now with the pandemic and had us all sheltered in place, I can only imagine. As a matter of fact, there's no imagination. In China, they already had concluded that over 30% of couples are now filing for divorce because of the fact that they had to stay at home with their significant other. And they didn't realize all the idiosyncrasies that their significant other had, and now it's a challenge. Now it's like they're bumping heads. So what I wanted to do was prep you for tomorrow for the speakers of the hour, where my friend Ola Quinn, who is all the way from Ireland, she's going to share about cabin fever conflict and how can you get over that, because she was saying she's going to talk about how the challenge has been, we've been stir crazy, staying in place, and then trying to continue with the relationship. But then we have put on new roles and new hats, being, a teacher and whatever else that we had to do that we normally otherwise wouldn't do, and having to figure out how to adjust with everything. So she's going to talk about cabin fever conflict and how to get over that. Then I have Dr. Erica Dawkins, who is a sexologist, and she's going to talk more about sex and intimacy, the difference between, by which I'm going to prep you now just for a few minutes to talk about that, and to get the conversation started, to find out what questions do you have for the 2 ladies. Dr. Dawkins is going to talk more about that, about sex and intimacy, the difference between, and whatever questions you have so that she can help you to know how to overcome right now and after the pandemic. How can you use this to your advantage so that you can now leverage this time to bring the 2 of you even closer and maybe make much more of a dynamic sex life and love life? I would love to know what your questions are so that I can fill that to them so they can prepare in answering your questions. So make sure you drop the questions in the comment section so then I can let them know, and then they can fully address any concerns or questions that you have. I'm not asking for you to air out your dirty laundry or your business, but just know that by you showing up here, actually it's a strength. It doesn't have to mean that something is wrong. And if something is wrong, I'm so grateful that you are using this opportunity to now help to fix the problem. by you showing up for this time. Because again, your time is precious. And I appreciate every time that you decide to show up for these free webinars so that you can take the information and apply it immediately so that you can know how to overcome right now, during and after the pandemic. So let me ask you a question. What is the difference? Is there a difference between sex and intimacy? Hey, Amy, how are you? Thank you for tuning in, everyone. Is there a difference between sex and intimacy? If so, what's the difference? You can talk back to me. So, for those who would like to know, if you are interested in knowing, the difference between sex and intimacy is that sex, according to the recent studies, sex is a sexual activity, including specifically sexual intercourse, whereas intimacy is a close, familiar, and usually affectionate or loving personal relationship with another person or group. Now, Dr. Dawkins probably could talk more about that with the group thing, but for the sake of the, we talk about two people here, and we don't have to, but I'm just geared tonight to talk about that, okay? You having, your relationship, your intimacy with your significant other. I mentioned earlier that the number one issue that has impacted relationships have been the communication or lack thereof, by which it shows up in finances. It shows up in your sex life. So it shows up in your parenting. You may think that it's the thing that is really the cause of the rift or the demise of a relationship. It is the communication or lack thereof. So I'm going to let the ladies talk more about that in regards to how it's showing up in the triggers and signs. But then we have to talk about, why does sex and intimacy decrease as time goes on? There's two types of models out there. You have the disillusionment model, and then you have the emergent distress model. So the disillusionment model is during the courtship, each person puts their best foot forward. We always put our best foot forward. What's very interesting, I used to teach this in one of my retreats. I was looking at my group the other day when I first created my fan page on my social media, right, on Facebook, and 10 years ago. And I remember when I had hosted my first Reset Your Marriage retreat, I was so excited about that, just to now bring in the couples and help them to know how to restore, how to reconnect, how to, I think it was restore, reconnect, and revitalize their marriage. And we were talking about the difference between the disillusionment model and the distress emergent model. And so what the disillusionment model is that you put your best foot forward. In the courtship, exactly, you want what you want. And so you're going to do what's necessary to put your best foot forward. The issue is that I used to always say, and I would demonstrate this, but I'm sitting down, but just imagine you have two, right? We had 2 feet, and you put your best foot forward, but that never negated that you had another foot. We put the best foot forward. We're going to put that right foot, everything. We made that foot look great, right? Now, we're not talking about how it was funny, is that I posted earlier, I dared you ladies to post your pic of your quarantine hair, nails, and feet. And I didn't have a problem showing my quarantine fingers, at least my nails. Now, the rest of me, I had to dare my own self. So I'm not going to show you my feet. They're quarantined. But the point is that the best foot forward, we know how to make our feet look great, especially during the summertime, the springtime, when we're ready to break out our sandals and our beautiful, open toe shoes. But when it comes down, you got to make sure that you have the right pedicure, right? And not just any pedicure, the right one. And but we try to make sure that both feet are taken care of, right? So my point is that we know how to make everything look good because we want it to be good. But if we couldn't make the other part of ourselves good, we're going to try to compensate for what we feel that we lack. And therefore, to get what we want, we're going to do what we have to do. But we're trying to hide that part of us that we think is not acceptable, that we think that the person wouldn't accept us. But that is where the lack of communication happens, because we're hiding that as best as we can. But when we get with our significant other, they're going to get to see just about everything about us, things that we've been trying to hide. And now it comes out in the relationship, and then it's not fair to that other person. the fact that that other foot is always glaring and we didn't know what we were getting into like we thought we did. So that's the disillusionment model, is the fact that when it comes to your relationship, even with sex and intimacy, people would say, why not try it until, before you buy it type situation. You would think that way. But at the same time, you have many people who believe in, let's wait until we get married to have sex. And then it all comes out in the wash that the sex may not be great. Y'all didn't talk about it the way that you did. As a matter of fact, me and my colleague, Coach Cece, we were just talking about this last week. We did a, impromptu about sex and relationships. And we talked about how there are sometimes, and I have to be honest, I was one of those people. There were still things about sex I didn't know and understand, because being raised as a Christian, you wait until you get married, you don't do those things, and you feel guilty if you do it. And so there were things I still didn't understand when it came to sex, when it came to intimacy, and got limited on that, to the point that now, how does it reflect and how does it show up in relationships? You have to understand that that's where communication comes in. But if you don't even know or understand certain things, how can you communicate it? Yes or yes. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I really appreciate your time. Hey, I knew that the title was going to get you all. See, I'm also testing here and there. I can't help it. Hey, Pooh, how you doing? Hey, Dan. Hey, Jeremy. Hey, Paris. Thank you for tuning in. All right, Yolanda. Hey, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. So Burrell said right now, all couples have to do during the pandemic is watch Pornhub and choose scenes to reenact. They will find this very fun and exciting. You would think that, but if you heard me earlier, Burrell, a lot of couples aren't doing that, because of the fact that they are becoming shocked at their significant other. They thought they knew that person, but now with this pandemic having us to really shelter in place, and there's no other distractions to really now put in the way of what really has been going on in their relationship. Now they're struggling. And that's exactly why we're having this conversation. And this is exactly why I wanted to talk about this, so that we can prep you for our guest speakers to talk really more in depth about how to help your sex life, how to help your marriage, how to help your relationship, so that perhaps you can use this time to fully take advantage, so that you can come even closer. It's interesting for those who are in relationships, who are married. Talk back to me. You tell me. The fact that I find that when it comes to conflict, things that you didn't think that you could overcome together, like it could really be bad in what you're facing. But if you face it together, how it actually brings you closer in getting through that conflict. Sometimes conflict done right, managed right, handled right, really does bring you even closer. Yolanda said that there's no time for sex, just work. Yolanda, I asked a question during my mental health support, on 24-hour support and prayer support day with my colleague, Coach Cece. We asked the question, we were talking about sex and intimacy. And I said, you know what? I wonder if couples are really having sex. Because if I was married, no. I'm like, I don't have time for that, right? Who has time for that? And then, of course, that's where the rift or the stuff comes out of the wash, right? Because it's like, well, it's not about you having time or not having time. It's about the fact that you have to continue to connect and be close. But I was just wondering, are people really having sex? Talk back to me, y'all. Who's having sex right now? No, not right now, because if you're watching this, I will hope that you're not watching this and having sex. You should focus on one thing at a time. But for those who are having sex, y'all talk back to me. Y'all having sex? Because if so, do you have any tips for the audience? Look, we're learning from each other, and to help each other. Together we stand, together we overcome, for real. But to make sure that you help yourself to get out even stronger, to not let yourself or your relationship or your sex life or your love life succumb to this pandemic, especially when we're coming out of it. We have gone through so many things in life. You were able to get through it. You're here watching this video. So that means that you can also get over with this. Don't let your relationship, your connection die down because of this pandemic. You're coming out of it. So perhaps use this opportunity. Now I'm going to let the trained, sexologist, the trained love and relationship coach talk to you. But I really just wanted to prep you to first find out if you had any questions so that I can fill it to them so they can answer those questions accordingly when they do their webinar tomorrow. But also wanted to ask, not just ask the questions, but just really kind of prep you to know that if you are having problems and challenges with your relationship, even before the pandemic or right now, that there's still hope. Keep hope alive. And it takes more than just saying, okay, well, let's just fix it. Let's just go ahead and have sex. If y'all not on the same page, if you're not communicating your needs and your wants and your desires, if you're not even scheduling and making time, because you don't know. I was talking to a client today about that. We never know what it really communicates. Our lack of communication is communicating. Our not saying something is communicating. Our disinterest is really communicating something. However that person is interpreting it, that's how they're interpreting it. And you want to find out what is interpreted. How is that person, how is your significant other taking that interpretation? Whether it's like Yolanda said, the challenge could be, well, look, I don't have time. I got to work. And your significant other may take it like, oh, well, I'm unimportant. I'm not important enough. Or, oh my God, we're having a problem in our relationship. You have those people who just takes it to another level when all you have to do is simply ask, well, what does this mean, Yolanda? Do you mean that you don't love me anymore? Does that mean, and a lot of times what's really interesting, we should not take the person's, even if it being our significant other, we should not have to take the ownership of how that person feels. But for the sake of the point, in terms of connection, if the focus and the goal, a lot of times, everyone, we have to have a goal. Like, what is the intention for your relationship? What is the intention for your marriage? What is the intention, for your sex life, for your love life? What is the intention? What is it that you want to gain out of this situation? Sometimes that's not even taking an L, but sometimes we just have to look at what is more important. Is it to win? I should tell my couples this before, that it's not about both of you trying to win, because a lot of times when couples come to me for therapy, or at that time, it was a matter of, well, tell him that he's wrong and let him know that I'm right. Well, here's the thing. In your mind, you're both right. You both think that you're right. So it's always a stalemate. As opposed to, why don't you really win? Humble yourselves and not keep listening and hearing for loopholes in the situation using this, but hear from your heart. So that at the end, if the goal is peace, if the goal is harmony, if the goal is oneness, is the fact that you're really communicating without communicating that you miss what you once had that brought you in the relationship in the first place, then why not say that? I get it. A lot of times we don't even know how to communicate. And this is exactly why we're having this conversation tonight, because of the fact that we need to address, how do we now jumpstart or reignite, whatever read you want to use, restore, revitalize your sex life and your love life, and not think that, okay, taking it to that level of, oh, this means that you don't love me. Oh my God, is something wrong? Oh, you're cheating on me. We asked that. We was like, well, who had time to cheat? Where you going? We're sheltered in place. You have time. If you're an essential worker, you should be going to work and coming back home. Like, who is having the time to cheat? So that said, I just really wanted to talk about that in regards to really seeing how you have to take in consideration by communication what is going on, because what is being conveyed and communicated, because we have, as human beings, if we have a question mark, we have to answer. And it's about answering right. A lot of times it's not even about getting the right answer. We just need to answer the question and in our minds. And I think it's best for you to now use this time to know where you fall in your relationship. Is it the disillusionment model that you fall in terms of having put your best foot forward? You were courting, it was a newlywed phase, and now you got the person, and you didn't talk about the issues that you thought, because of you had your best foot forward, and you try to use your best foot forward to overcompensate and to overshadow that bad foot that you didn't want them to see. And now that bad foot is this glaring now, because we're all sheltered in place and we don't have any more what's the word I'm looking for? We don't have any more distractions or deflections or anything else to try to steer away from seeing that daggone bad foot that you said I do too as well. And let me see. I hope this is helpful. Talk back to me if you're finding value with this conversation. I just really want to ask you, what questions did you have for them, for the great, amazing speakers that I have for you to help you with your relationship, with your sex life and your love life, your marriage, as well as just prepping you, to really have this needed conversation. Because right now, like I said, the divorce rates are going up because of the fact that people aren't really the way that they've been presenting themselves on social media. My dad used to say to me that, my dad used to tell me that it's not so much about how you are when everything is good, how your relationship is going and how your connection is going. It's about when it's bad. Then you really want to see how that person operates, how they function, how do they handle conflict, when the pressure's on. So now we're seeing it, because again, a lot of you couples, now it's not like I'm looking for you. It's not like, I'm not calling out every single couple. You may be the perfect model couple, and that's great. And if you are, put some information and some advice in this comment section, because you need to help out your fellow couples out there. But the fact that, from what I see and what I'm hearing, and then the studies that are coming out regarding what has happened with this pandemic and how it's impacting our couples, our relationship, our love life, our sex life, is about having a conversation to help you to know how to overcome during and after the pandemic. So that as the conflict happens and you navigate through this and you use this opportunity to grow in this relationship, in your sex life, your love life, to get closer, to be harmonious, then conflict, usually if done right and you communicating right, it does bring you closer. And if you're able to survive this, then you surely can survive anything. So hold on, keep hope alive. The other model is the emergent distress model. Similar to the previous model, newlywed couples are highly affectionate and loving. They overlook the problems and come up and cause tension in the relationship. And the partners start to view each other as difficult. So in the emergent distress model, what happens is that you're in this relationship, you were able to get past the newlywed phase, but yet there are still conflict that happens and you don't know how to handle it. And now you're looking at your significant other as the problem of the relationship. And so you already said I do at this point, or you decide to continue to stay in the relationship with the person. The honeymoon phase is over, but you were still able to keep it moving with your relationship. But now you're starting to look at that person as being the problem of the relationship, as opposed to the problem itself. That's what I found in doing the work that I've done for couples and with couples. Was, I said earlier, that communication really is the number one issue. The lack of communication of any relationship, of its demise, because sometimes we don't even know what to communicate. Sometimes we don't even know what's going on with ourselves. And that's why it's important. I don't know if you heard this before, ladies and gentlemen, but it's not about it being 50-50. It's about being 100-100. And a lot of times we don't come into the relationship as 100-100 because we have trauma, we have baggage, we have limitations, we have our own view of our own selves. And that's why it's so important. It's not too late to work on your relationship. It's not too late to work on yourself, to help for the sake of your relationship, because it's only fair to you and fair to your significant other on working on some issues and being honest and open. I always tell people, I tell you now, that coming to see someone for therapy is a strength. It's not a weakness. When you're able to humbly admit that there is a problem, that is a strength, because you were able to break through and pass the fear of what people would think, or the fear of now being viewed differently than what you portray it to be. It's okay, because we all are created to be relational and to help each other out. This is exactly why I have put this whole webinar series all month long for you, to help you overcome during and after the pandemic. So if there is an issue that's going on with yourself and with your relationship, then it's okay to seek professional help. It's okay to seek a mental health professional like myself, or any of my colleagues who, like Orla Quinn or like Dr. Erica Dawkins, where they specialize in sex and relationships. So what you need to do is consider now getting to know yourself, getting to know your significant other a little bit deeper than you do, and having the conversation and working through that conflict so that you can now use this opportunity with the pandemic to get closer and no longer putting anything ahead of it, distractions, or also asking. There's nothing wrong with asking the questions to your significant other. What do you like? What you don't like? How's this position? How's that position? Like Burrell said, if you have to, download Pornhub, I don't know what that is, but if you need to download that and, kind of watch a couple of videos, just to kind of, not just get you in the mood, but if you need to do what you have to do for the sake of the goal, remember, have a goal, have an intention, keep that in mind to help you to not only just get past and get through this pandemic, but to sustain your relationship. So Jeremy said, people are also scared for their partner to accept what they are into. You know what? I would say, yeah, I believe so as well. Because again, these are things that they are not talked about. It's hidden because the person feels that they're going to be unaccepted. It's that considered bad foot of whatever they're into. And then what happens, Jeremy and everyone, what happens is that now it comes out in the wash. It's like now it rises to the surface, and then now the person, their significant other, feels slighted. They feel, what's the word? They feel betrayed. They're shocked, they're disappointed because they thought that they knew the person, and now they realize that they didn't know them enough. And then that's the number one problem, lack of communication. I'd rather you tell me straight up all that you're going, all you're doing, and all that you're into, so that you can let me decide if I want to move forward or not. But that's the thing. People are not trying to tell the truth or to really show their best foot forward because they feel like that's going to be disregarded or it's unacceptable. And they really want that person. So they would rather hide certain parts of them and hope and pray that it doesn't get found out. But come on, if you're with someone, you're with someone, you're going to find out. And then that's where the conflict happens. So it's better to just, please, everyone, start communicating. Start talking about what is going on with you when it comes to your relationship. Talk about what you want and what you don't want. Use this opportunity to take it up another level. Hey, Antenna said that I know exactly where I fail. You can share it here. Where did you fall at? So here is Burrell. He said, here's a question for the experts. Does asking your partner if they are into threesomes and such imply that you may be a cheater? I will ask them that. I will bring that up tomorrow because I'm going to let the experts answer those questions. Yeah, anybody has an answer for that though? Let's go ahead and have a conversation. And Nikki Jones said, great points. I feel like you are talking about my relationship. We have had so many issues with our communication. Hey, Zakia. Hey, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. All right. So Antenna said, threesomes are cool. With me and my woman, we have an open relationship. If I was in a relationship, I can't share, Jeremy said. And this is real, everyone. What's very interesting is that I'm finding out now as a counselor, I've counseled many people who have been in in threesomes and things like that. Is it called polyamorous? I can't ever pronounce it right, but they're into relationships, beyond two people. And then I want to make sure that it's not so much about me sticking within my scope. It is, but to make sure that you get the right answers and to have support around what you all decide. Now, here in this conversation, no judgment, no foul. Y'all do what y'all do with y'all relationship. That's between you and y'all. All that is asked is for you to communicate. It's a matter of communicating what you want and what you don't want, what you like and what you don't like. And to be fair. Fair is relative, right? But if you really, again, what is the intention and the goal for your relationship? Is it to sustain it? Is it to overcome? Is it to keep going? Or is it just short-lived? Because a lot of times for people around my age or my generation and before, maybe even now, I'm not sure about now. I don't think these millennials are playing, but back in my generation, it's like, okay, if you were pregnant, then you got married because you want to make it right in the sight of God, or you want to make sure that your children have, both parents together and things like that. But then it made it such a hard time with the marriage because of the fact that it was for something outside of themselves. It wasn't about the harmony. People were having fun. They had, I guess, too much fun, and then the result was the children. And no, you don't regret having your children. But at the same time, you're like, wow, why did I make that move? And I have found out that many couples who have decided to get divorced, they became great friends after the fact. And it made it easier for them to co-parent. So this conversation is also about setting you free of any decisions that you made, that even in your relationship, that you're like, well, why am I with this person? Why did I get married? Okay, well, that is something that you have to answer for yourself and be okay with your answer and make the decision, the conscious one, that's going to be of most benefit to you and your significant other. Make sure that you communicate. That is the bottom line and what I want to drive home to you. We can talk about models. We can talk about methods. We can talk about strategies. But first and foremost, be honest with yourself. Be honest with your significant other. Let them know what you want and what you don't want. Don't come in, when I said about being fair, don't come into the relationship now. You're years in, and now all of a sudden you want to introduce your significant other to another person that you want to bring into the relationship, and you didn't talk about that before. And what's very, very interesting to that is that, let's say that you were already into that before you said I do, or before you got into the relationship with the person that you're with, and then you expect them to understand and be cool with your decision. How is that fair? How is that fair? How is it that you expect them to now be cool with it because they love you, and you expect for them to understand, and if they love you and they accept you, then they will accept this. But if you already had this desire beforehand, because typically people do before they say I do, why haven't you said something before? Oh, because that's the bad foot that's unacceptable. You wanted to see how you can bring it in. Now, I'm not saying this is for every single person, but you now decide to now bring it up, and it's about communication. And it's also about giving that person that decision to decide if they are with it or not. And what I found, having counseled couples in these situations, a lot of times the significant other will concede and go with, because they do love that person. But then they really didn't go with it because now it became a conflict. And then now it's like, we were with it before. Why you decided to not talk about it now, or why you have an issue now? Because the person never really liked it in the first place. They were just trying to appease you because they love you. See, that's too much, y'all. In terms of the lack of communication. So y'all need to work that out. And if there's a stalemate, or the fact that the answer is, sometimes you got to go with the answer. If the answer is like, you know what, if this is causing conflict in my marriage or my relationship, or if it's disrupting our peace, then you have to decide which one is more for you. At the end of the day, which one is more? What is good for you and how it makes you feel, or what is good for your relationship? Because now, the final piece to this is that I have found, talking to couples the other day, there's one person who was married. She kept living in her past before, so pre-marriage. And so how she operates in her marriage is as if she's a teenager at home. And she had some hangups and limitations that impacted her relationship with her significant other. And a lot of times we don't realize what we're doing because it's subconscious. My job is to help you to bring your subconscious to your conscious state, so you can see what are the core precipitating issues that's the driving factor. A lot of decisions that we make, a lot of things that we do is based on what I call unspoken rules, unspoken norms, unspoken principles. So because of these automatic thoughts that precipitate or drive your behavior, you don't even realize what you're doing. It's like driving a car. You didn't know how to drive a car at first, but now you got the hang of it and you're able to multitask while you're driving. So it's the same deal because it became automatic for you. Same deal when it comes to our thinking, our behavior, our attitude, our interaction, our engagement. A lot of things are subconscious. Now it's about you bringing your subconscious, being conscious of your subconscious. So then you can make a conscious decision concerning your relationship and how you're going to manage it. So at the end of the day, with your relationship, you need to now consider what is most important for you in your relationship. And communication is always key, everyone. So please don't operate like this is, a lot of times people don't transition from where they were to where they are. A lot of times we operate as if like this is 10 years before. And did you notice? I don't know, whoever heard of the 7-year itch? Every 7 years we change. Every 7 years. So typically what happens is around the 14th, between 14th and 15th year, people start to get divorced. Not speaking that over y'all, but typically, they can't make it after the second 7 years. And, hey, I'm here to help you to consider and reconsider, and especially right now, to not have this to be the excuse or the reason why you're considering leaving the marriage or leaving the relationship. I'm not talking about other factors that are just severe or is, that it is really bad where, okay, your decision, if it has to do with your life that you need to check out, okay, fine. But I'm talking about as far as like, you can use this to your advantage to help your relationship out. And communication is key. And being able to now see where you are in the relationship. And if you're still operating like this is 7 years before, or you like as if you're home with your parents, and this is before you got married, and you're still trying to operate, and there's things that's coming up in your relationship that triggers you to now react and behave, you have to ask the question, is that fair? It is really time for you to transition and catch up with yourself, with your current age, meaning that a lot of times if something has happened to us when we were 3 years old, and we're 37 years old now, then a lot of times we're still stuck at 3 because of something that has happened that kept us stuck. And now it shows up all the time because your mindset is all over that. Every trigger that reminds you of what has happened to you at 3 years old keeps popping up in your relationship or keep popping up in your life until you now make a decision to become conscious of that and to do something about it. Doing something about it is to see a therapist like myself. So just consider that. I hope that this had prepared you, for our conversation in regards to your sex life, your relationship, your love life, and how to help you and your significant other to overcome during and after the pandemic. Burrell said the only thing that's constant is change, therefore existing the possibility of a new sexual fetish that appears after marriage. So, hey, communicate. That's the bottom line, is to communicate, to have the conversation, and to respect your significant other, yourself, your relationship, and whomever else you're inviting. Make sure that you are communicating. That's all that's being asked of you. And yeah, you may have to count the cost that if in having this conversation, that it may cost your relationship, because it's only fair to the person if they decide if they want to rock with that or not. If they don't, that's the answer. You have to decide if you want to then move forward. If the goal was to still continue to be with the person. This is why a lot of times people cheat. We always ask like, well, why are people cheating? Understand that when it comes to cheating, the cheating isn't the problem. It really is the solution to a problem. The problem is deeper than the cheating, everybody. I don't know if y'all knew that. The cheating is a solution to the problem. It's not the problem itself. There's something underlying. And that's the stuff that you have to now understand and realize, especially when it comes to your relationship. So everyone, I thank you.